Welcome to the Autistic Culture Podcast Advocacy Edition. In these episodes, we tackle the issues that matter most to autistic people.
Each week, we share our insights and the experiences of our guests on how to live authentically and thrive as autistics.
I'm Dr. Angela Kingdon, the linguistic autistic.
And I'm Matt Lowry, licensed psychological practitioner. Let's dive into strategies for living your best, most authentically autistic life.
Episode 124, Justice for Victor. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Autistic Culture Podcast. It's me. I am not saying hello to Matt because, unfortunately, we've got a slightly different episode today. Matt is at the doctor's and we couldn't reschedule. And this is one of those times where I really felt like our community needed this episode. So hopefully with Matt's blessing, you will allow me to entertain you without him today. And it's actually one of those episodes where I'm going to sit back and do a little more listening than talking, because today we are holding space for we're going to talk about holding space for the tension of opposites, holding space for grief, for complexity, and for a very hard and necessary truth. And that is that autistic justice cannot be white-centered. Obviously, Matt and I are both white. We bring that aspect of who we are to these episodes, and that means we miss stuff. We miss stuff all the time. You guys correct us. I love this about the autistic community. We put out episodes that are not sensitive to other members of our community, and you guys are on it. And I appreciate that. And we fix stuff as quickly as we can, or sometimes take episodes down because we're not going to get it right. And that can be challenging. But to me, that is one of my favorite things about autistic culture, is that, we can just fix stuff. We can just say, hey, I was wrong and I didn't get that. And I know a lot of us for the last couple of weeks have been sharing articles and GoFundMe about Victor Perez. That's what we're going to talk about today. He was a 17-year-old autistic, non-speaking Puerto Rican teenager. He was shot by police in his own front yard. I am sure you've heard about this. His family had to make the heart-wrenching decision to take him off life support. And we know Victor is not the first. And, I wish I could say he was going to be the last, but we know that, especially under this administration, is probably not the case either. So we want to talk today about what does that mean? What does it mean to be autistic and be an autistic advocate when this type of injustice happens? If we just shut up because it's more convenient and there's so many fires burning, here's one more we don't want to talk about. It is so easy to disappear our Black and brown brothers and sisters and neurokin. We've talked about Elijah McCain on here, Stefan Watts, Ryan Gaynor. Their stories demand justice. And so I reached out for support from the community to say, let's have a meaningful conversation about this. And some of the most meaningful conversations I have had about race have been with my dear friend, Faith Clarke, who avid listeners already know. She was our very first guest on this show. So if you listen to episode 27, Trivia is Autistic, Faith came on and lost miserably to Matt, which I'm sure she's glad Matt isn't here. It was a thrashing, but listen, she came back. So I feel like it wasn't too bad. So the way I know Faith is she did a book with me called Parent Like a Ninja. She is, more importantly, an inclusion specialist, and she works with organizations to help them build healthier cultures. She's worked across industries, navigating systems And systems not necessarily built for diversity of humans, but she is also the mother of 3 neurodivergent kids. And her experience with a non-speaking autistic kid is part of what I wanted to bring to this conversation. And I just want to remind you all, it's really easy to jump in with your opinions on things, but make sure you are listening to lived experience. And that is a big part of why Faith is here. So I appreciate that. And somebody else with lived experience is Darren Calhoun. He's a justice advocate, a worship leader, a photographer based in Chicago, and the co-host of Second Sunday podcast, which I love. You should check that out. I'll put it in the show notes. It's not surprising to me that he and Faith are friends because, like Faith's work, his work bridges communities across race, gender, and neurodivergence. Darren is a powerful voice for intersectionality and faith-based inclusion, and someone who speaks the truth with clarity and compassion. So I am really grateful to both of them for joining me. This was not an easy ask, and I hesitated about this. I wasn't able to record this episode last week because I was traveling, but I hesitated about doing this episode because I was like, well, maybe too much time has passed. Maybe I could just ignore it too. And then Tiffany Hammond, who you guys know from our Monsters High episode, she wrote an incredible post on Fidgets and Fries that really said, hey, autistic advocates, there cannot be autistic justice for just some of us. So she really called me into deeper reflection. And that post yesterday was a turning point for me to say, all right, I'm going to reach out and we're going to have this hard conversation. I hope you guys stay with me. I know it's not going to be a fun conversation, but I really think it is necessary. And it is, if we want a movement that is truly rooted in liberation for all, these are the conversations that we have to have. So that was a big, long introduction. With that, I am going to bring on Darren and Faith. Thank you guys both for being here.
So glad to be here.
Awesome. Okay, Darren, you and I just met yesterday. I'm really grateful to Faith for introducing us. But I want you to just sort of give us the lay of the land. What happened to Victor and what struck you most about the way this unfolded?
Definitely. So one, I'm really honored to be here, and I really hope that we can just sit in for a minute with these stories of what's happened. So Victor Perez is a 17-year-old autistic and nonverbal boy who also has cerebral palsy. And he tragically died after being removed from life support after he was shot multiple times by police in Idaho. This incident occurred after police responded to a 911 call reporting a man with a knife. The report said they suspected that he was drunk or intoxicated, but he had a staggered walk due to him having cerebral palsy. And so his family was trying to take a large kitchen knife away from him. And there is video of the incident happening. And in the video, I saw several people around. He's inside of a chain link fence. You know, he's in a backyard, and he does have something in his hand. But when police arrive on the scene, they immediately started shouting at him, to drop the knife and so forth, and ended up shooting him 9 times. His leg had to be amputated, and eventually he was pronounced brain dead. And so his story, what happens, is really a tragic highlighting of what happens when disability and law enforcement cross paths. There's so many ways that this story is horrific, and I hope that in our conversation today we really help to not only humanize Victor and his story, but also to really expand on what our society does in the way of violence, especially when it comes to police, especially when it comes to race. because these things are disproportionately affecting Black and Brown children in police interactions.
Yeah. Uh, Faith, what I don't know when or if you heard this story, but when you did hear it, because I know you've heard it now, what was your first thought? What was your first reaction?
I had a couple of knee-jerk reactions because my son's 26, and I think you get really up close to Black man in America with a disability. There's no way that you can be kin, you can be mother to that human and not be up close to the risk to his life in every moment that he's public facing, and even when he's not. Right. So I had I couldn't really read it first because I knew I would have a big reaction to it. But when I read the article, one that I was reading, the first thought I had was, is this neighbor white? And it kind of, there's a way that, like, if I was the neighbor, I'm not going to make presumptions about what I would do, what I would think about another person's domestic situation. But what I do know really deep down is that I wouldn't think the police is a solution to what I imagined I saw. And so there was that question of whiteness came to my mind immediately, that there's a disconnect. Either you have a different experience with the police than I do, or this article is lying, that you thought that the police would help. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's at least like the way I grew up, when there's a problem or when there's danger. And again, this is my like very white girl growing up in Connecticut perspective, but like officer friendly is the guy you call when there's a problem. Right. And the first time I really I mean, like, I knew about obviously police violence and, discrimination, systemic discrimination. But when I heard that woman, Amy Cooper, who called the police on the black guy who was the birder in New York City, and I could hear her doing this really performative, like, there's a black man. And then you see him and he's like the dorkiest birder, like, dude. But you can tell, like, the police are set up to help Amy Cooper. Like, she said all the right things that are like, that could have gotten that guy shot. I mean, and then add disability and the layers of intersectionality. Like, he's a super smart guy. Like, that really helped. He's like, yes, please call the police. I would love to speak with them. How brave do you have to be to even say that or think that?
Yeah.
So there's like a way that white people think of the police, and obviously we don't know if his neighbors were white or not, but it's just the hegemony of how do we think of the police as helpful or not, and then how likely are they to be helpful?
Exactly.
Like, what are the other things that we could have defaulted to that maybe in other cultures somebody would have thought of something different other than calling the police?
Exactly. I think it's one of those things where we really have to look at what our frame of reference are. A lot of times we are kind of born into the experience that we have, and we don't realize that that experience isn't universal. Yeah. And so for people who are raised as white, it is a thing where the common understanding is that people who are white are just human, are just default, and that other people have races. Other people have descriptors and titles and groupings that absolutely don't apply to me, quote unquote, me as a white person. I am Black.
Right. Me as a white person. Wait, right.
No. But the other part is, and some of this comes from my experience with training and, doing some anti-racism work, is that a lot of times white people don't realize that they're white until well into their adult years. They realize that there is another race when they're young, when something happens along racial lines, but they don't often realize that in fact, some of your listeners right now may be realizing that they're white. right as we're talking about it.
One of our listeners who I think you definitely know Amari, right? Faith Amari Ice. Amari was with a bunch of authors, most of whom were white. I think there was one other Black person in the room. And he said, let me ask you guys a really quick question. What's it like to be white? And everybody just screens down.
Yeah.
Like nothing. There was no information available.
Right.
Human?
Yeah.
Like that is not an experience. And I think as autistic people, because I want to tie this into the neurodivergent experience, and I know were you late diagnosed? When were you diagnosed? Like, were you diagnosed as a kid?
Yeah, I was not. I didn't strike anybody's notion that anything was different about me. I was adult diagnosed only about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
With
So
ADHD. Yeah.
I think all of our autistic listeners know what that feeling is like of being autistic. Like, if you ask them what's it like to be autistic, they got at least 10 things right away, right? Yeah. There's just like an easy list. But if you are white and you are a listener, do that thing that Amari did with me when he said, what's it like to be white? What's it like to... Literally, my brain got erased. I'm like, nothing. It's, I guess you should, you go grocery shopping? Like, I don't know what that question means.
Yeah.
And so if you are clear when I say, what's it like to be neurodivergent, which I bet you are, Darren, if I ask you that, you're like, I know what that is. And if I ask you, what's it like to be Black, you have an answer. And if you don't have an answer to that question and you think you can skip it, that gets tricky. This is what feminism tried to do. We're like, hey, let's just skip the question of race and we'll just focus on liberating all the women. And I would like you to note bodily autonomy for women today. And I don't know, voting rights, I guess, for women now are in question. That is because we did not bring everyone along. There is no autistic justice if there is not justice for everyone. Absolutely. We can't just like pull out the like palatable Asperger's kids that are going to discover the next, I don't know, rocket ship and save those. Because believe me, that shit turns ugly really fast.
But the thing is that it has this, all of it is the same underlying issue, right? That if we don't kind of come to terms with our relationship to difference, that there are some differences that are okay. We can all be, different type of coffee drinkers. Those differences are all right. Or morning and evening people, maybe I don't judge that too much. But some other differences mean I'm morally superior. And until we kind of, as good as we are, just acknowledge that we will, even if we sort out race, which even if we will continue to find some other people to be morally superior to, and will enslave them. It's this issue has to be about what's going on that causes us to make somebody deficient, whoever that somebody is, and therefore worthy of what happened to Victor.
Right. So. Yeah, and that's that piece there, that what makes someone worthy or unworthy of treatment, care, so forth. All of these things are subconsciously, quietly playing into when we feel threatened versus when we feel safe. It plays into what appears to be dangerous. Like in the video, the neighbors who were around were standing and trying to interact and engage with him. They weren't afraid. But the police, within 12 seconds of arriving, opened fire. Multiple, like there are 4 or 5 police officers immediately opening fire on the other side of a chain link fence.
Right. But wait, how do you make sense of that? I don't even know how to think about it. So I immediately just think, let's not talk about this. Maybe it was some bad apples. People in Idaho are weird. I don't know. Like, my brain just wants to come up with some answer.
Yeah. And what we do, there's an empathy gap that happens, right? Where often if you have experienced police as safe and helpful, then the first place your brain is going to go to is police are safe and helpful. Therefore, the problem must be. And we start filling in and doing autocomplete, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I remember I was riding in a car with several friends. I was the only Black person. We were all about the same age. And they got into a conversation about police interactions and getting pulled over. And I remember them talking about, oh yeah, I told the police this and I told them that and I said this, and how they were like talking back and how they talked their way out of interactions. And I was just silent and then spoke up and I was like, I have worried that I would die every single time I was stopped by police my entire life.
Yeah.
Right? They had no concept of being afraid during a routine traffic stop.
Yeah.
And I had pure heart palpitations immediately at just the conversation. I'm getting goosebumps right now just talking about it. It is that real, and it's something that Black and brown parents have to train their kids about how to engage with police. And without jumping too far ahead, that does get into why some people are for ABA, whereas other people are trying to figure out how to navigate this, because it is so life and death that survival often means your ability to mask or to present in non-threatening ways. And you literally are being demanded to manage the fears and emotions of the people that are holding the guns.
When I talk about, sorry, Faith, when I talk about masking, I will often give as an example, like going to the motor vehicle department. Like sometimes you will choose to mask. I don't never mask. Like sometimes it just makes life easier. But when you have a nonverbal child, or when you are nonverbal, I feel like that's a different conversation. Again, that's where my privilege comes in, because when we talk about this idea that you can choose to mask or not choose to mask, is that even a choice for Jaden, Faith?
No, not at all. It's not, and it's often not a choice for my other two either. And whether that's a combination of, I am the hippie mom who said, no, be yourself, so here we are just being our quirky selves in the world. But I remember when my youngest was 16 and it hit me, oh my goodness, Black, male body, cute, little white girls are looking and kind of, and I felt terrified because his social stuff wasn't in place. In the translation, you took people at their word. Like, he asked them, is anything going on here? And they say, no, we're just friends. And he's like, fine. I'm like, oh my God, you can't, right? So there's a way that we assume all of the masking that we hear about. Most people who are neurodivergent are not masking to the extent that one or two people who we make as icons are. And then you add Blackness to that, and so a Black male body not able to mask is vastly different from a white male body. And I see this over and over in school situations, that my kid is going to be the one that's aggressive, and that kid is going to be confused or dysregulated. And I'll get third party. No, the person didn't even see it. Jaden was aggressive today. And I have to say, peel it back. Tell me what happened. Tell me the setup. Tell me the context. Oh, so he had a sensory overload because you walked into the classroom too fast and didn't get his permission. And just the framing so quickly. So yeah, people can't mask necessarily. Certainly Jaden can't, or not to the extent that's needed to keep your body safe.
So what do you do? How do you not go to parties? Do you not have kitchen knives? Do you not invite people over? Is that what you do?
What I do, we isolate.
You do.
Because and when I do work with, communities and families, part of what I say is that it's not the autistic person, it's the entire unit that's supporting that autistic person is in need of support. So we have triple locks on, I am so committed to can't get out of the house. Like if we had a fire, like fire is safer than you getting out of the house, and then the random people on the street see you and misunderstand your situation, which is like, I can deal with fires, right? So the idea that people say to me, come visit, we will understand. I'm like, no, you won't. I can't trust you to understand. You have to prove yourself to me that I can trust you to understand. That means you need to be willing to come here. Like if you come to me and visit and show yourself to be trustworthy, maybe. So the level of isolation and then the level of 24/7 hypervigilance in the bodies, it's very similar to our friends with chronic illnesses. That the family unit holds this kind of hypervigilance, which is very difficult to sustain. And so you add Blackness to it, and there's already a medical disparity in care,
Right.
and so then that there's going to be, moms and caregivers struggling because we're not kind of engaging in life in ways that are full of ease.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless you have tons of money, and even so. But
Even then, right. And just, I mean, as I'm listening to you, Faith, I'm thinking about the social capital that it's lost when you're not, quote unquote, being neighborly, and you're not having, popping over or having folks over, all the things that we, unwritten rules that we use to validate and to accept and to grow comfortable with, you don't have access to because you are preserving the life of your child and your family. And again, when one person hasn't thought about what it means to be white, because I grew up like, we keep the windows closed. We don't need folks on the street seeing in our house. I know I'm in a white neighborhood because the windows are open. I can see clear into the back of the house. Right. There's so many social differences that are unwritten and unspoken that create these perceptions of, well, why are they so private? What are they keeping secret? These ways that we then go to, well, everyone I know is open and everyone can just come in and just pop in anytime. Whereas in these other, in Black, brown, and disabled and all these other kinds of intersectional houses, you have to be a lot more protective. You have to be a lot more vigilant. And it then creates this loop of, just like you said, how do I know when I'm in danger? How do I perceive when the police are presumed to be right and just and good, versus when you look at the data that shows that more than 40% of the police violence that happens to disabled people.
Right.
Oh, is that really the number?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're not going to hear that in the news report.
No.
Right?
No, I had never even thought of that. But of course, I think this is even why my we're not a news podcast. This isn't what we do. We do have we have a lot of listeners, and I'm like, they're not going to like this topic. We should talk about, I don't know, what are we doing next? DuckTales. They'll like DuckTales. And then I was just like, wait, we don't talk about it because it's just not convenient to know this stuff. It's really nice not to know. And I get to not know that.
Yeah. And on this whole thing of community too, because Darren, as you're saying that, I'm also thinking about the fact that when you are not other, the community building patterns are reciprocal. It isn't just on you to build community. It's like, I have come over with my pot of whatever stew and you've brought a plant and we're all hi. When you are other, and in the case of Blackness within largely white communities, which is where I am right now, you're other automatically, and then further other by the oddness of the behavior or whatever it is, and in your own practices. And there are no bridge building habits. I love the work of John Powell in Othering and Belonging Institute in California, and one of his key phrases or practices and policies is bridging. And there are no bridging behaviors across difference. We don't have that in our bones. So the moment I'm different by one, and then two, and then three characteristics, the resourcing, so all resourcing shrinks, and so the behaviors aren't coming towards me. And when I told you about the incident with my son getting out through the window, and when that happened, and I thought about what would be needed to help the community to know him, the labor would be mine. Yes,
Mm.
there is
100%.
a Facebook group
Right?
that I didn't know about, by the way. Nobody told me there was a Facebook group until I started doing some bridging.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would have to create the flyer. I would be putting the thing. I would be knocking on the doors. And I was like, yeah, I'm the one who's not sleeping nights though. I'm the one who drives up my road and imagines a fire truck every single day. I leave
Mm-hmm.
the house and Jaden's there and I'm driving up the road. I'm like, there is no fire truck. Thank God. There are no flashing lights. Thank God. Every day. So no, I don't have the energy to also explain to you what autism is and that this is my son.
Right. All right. That's a good place to pause. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about what solidarity looks like, what community can look like. I want to really imagine with both of you what true autistic justice is. So let's take a break and we'll come back.
We love sharing stories of autistic culture. And if you are seeing yourself in any of these stories and you're wondering if maybe you're one of us, or maybe you're already diagnosed or self-diagnosed, and you want to know if Matt can help you live your life better and be more authentically autistic, check out his website at mattlowrylpp.com. That's Matt, M-A-T-T, Lowry, L-O-W-R-Y. And then that LPP, it stands for Licensed Psychological Practitioner. So head on over to mattlowrylpp.com and learn more about working with my buddy Matt.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Autistic Culture Podcast. We are talking today about the tragedy with Victor Perez. Sorry, you guys. We were talking about the tragedy with Victor Perez, but also why we keep finding ourselves here and what do we need to do to end up somewhere else. I think for all of us, nobody saw that story and celebrated. Everybody was like, oh, what a terrible tragedy. And yet, it's not a surprise, this terrible tragedy. It is not the first time, and we are not doing much to change it. And very often, what happens, I'm very excited to have two DEI experts. I think you guys just got put out of work the last 3 months. But
There's always work.
but here's the thing is like, I observed a lot of DEI overtures, really, even with autism advocates, is performative. We're not really doing the work. We're saying the words. We're wearing the armbands. We're turning our, I don't know, Facebook pictures black or something. I don't even think we did anything for Victor. I saw people post, a GoFundMe, and we will put the link to that, and please contribute, and we will as well. But it's like now even the performative allyship seems to have in the last 90 days gotten the boot. So what does this mean? Have we given up?
Yeah. So I when we talk about what's wrong with the world, there's kind of an instinctual response to say, well, what do I need to do? How do I need to fix it? And I think that's good and it's important. But again, there's a caveat there of we have to be careful of, for those of us who live in a westernized society, a colonized society, individualism is been touted as the highest good. How can I be a good person at the expense of how can we change the world and make things better? So for me, my personal thing is we all have a role in making the world better, but it's up to us to find out what that role is and what we can do. So I really encourage folks to move to move from just figuring out how am I as an individual going to be a good person, and think about what are the institutions, what are the things that uphold, maintain, create our societal standards over generations. What are those things that are happening, and how can I affect those? Now, those sound like big, fancy, abstract words, so let me make it practical. How can I affect the school system that I'm a part of? How can I affect the medical practices that I'm a part of? How can I affect the hiring and firing and policies that are created in the job that I'm a part of? These are institutions. These create the rules and policies that even when good people say they, want to do good things, we will always run into rules and policies that keep things the same way they currently are.
Hmm.
You look like you have a question there. What are you going to say?
Me?
Uh-huh.
Because I feel like it's like asking. I'm looking for the metaphor, but it's like asking somebody to identify the water they're swimming in.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It
It's
is.
like you don't. It's so hard to see what you can't see. So, like for instance, I fought really hard to get my kid into a school, because you were talking about schools, into like the best school in Washington, D.C. It was like really hard to get into, and we didn't live there. And I wanted to get in, and I found a way in. Like it was a by hook or crook situation. And then it occurred to me that every single person in power in the school was white. There were plenty of black people. It was the janitor, it was the
Mm-hmm.
PE teacher, and it was the
Mm-hmm.
lunch ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And they were lovely, important, and celebrated members of the community. But I was like, that's interesting. Like that I wasn't looking for that when I picked this school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started raising questions about that. I mean, this is a long time ago now. I don't know, 15 years or something, but I started raising questions about that. And there were all these perfect explanations. Oh, by the way, this is in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like there's some shortage of like
Right.
black scholar. We're not in Pocatello, Idaho,
Where
folks.
could we find it?
How do we find black people that could teach third graders? Like, I don't know. But yeah, there were all these reasons that were given to me, and other schools that were suggested, like if you don't like it, leave. Like, and then I was like, I know what I will do. I will rally all the black parents, because there were black parents. And I'm like, I will ask them. And they just looked at me like, we got jobs, lady. If you would like to make this your project, you have fun. Like,
that's cute for you.
That's really cute. Yeah. And I was like, what does this mean? And then I recently read Ta-Nehisi Coates's book, The Message.
Yes.
And I was like, I needed this 15 years ago, because the message is about his trip to Palestine. And when I read the book, I was like, oh, please tell me what to do about Palestine. Like, could you please solve this problem for me? Just like I wanted to solve the problem of no black people in power at Janney Elementary School. And like the answer was like, listen to fucking Palestinian people.
Right.
Like, so when you say like our community, I'm like, yes, but white people, we do that with such gusto. Like, especially the well-meaning ones of us. We're like, I will fix this with gusto and my opinion on how to say as quickly as possible.
With zero input. And that's the thing we're trying we're going to identify. We're going to see it. We're going to start noticing it. We're going to look at the ways that we want to quickly run to solution before we've even understood the problem.
Yep.
We're going to think about, why is it that I assume that I know the best for these other people that I didn't notice until 5 minutes ago, right?
Yeah.
And we're not going to use guilt. We're not going to be shamed. We're not going to get into our tears and then ask a black person or a disabled person, whoever, to absolve us of our sins. But instead, we're going to sit with that discomfort. We're going to sit and get close to, in proximity to the thing that we're trying to affect. We need to have firsthand experiences and stories and make this. We essentially need to tell it from the first person perspective of the group that we want to help or be an ally to. We need to know what their pain looks like, and not just one good heart-wrenching story, but the inconvenience they experienced at the grocery store this week.
I
Yeah.
did some work. I did some work with a organization, and it was about race, but the board had a mixture of Black and white women, though. I think there were no men, or no men in that board meeting, even if there were there.
That was probably a good thing.
And it was interesting to me because a white senior person on the board, senior woman, she said, when a Black person is saying to me this, that's about race, and I feel that same thing. It was like, I remember that moment when I was saying to my husband, this thing is about me being a woman. And he had that thing. I think we have more experiences in common than we allow ourselves to know and to tune into. And so I tend to say, you have an experience that's adjacent to this. Let's find it and go in there. You, because of the amount of power identities you have as a white-bodied person, you have the luxury of moving away from that and tucking it into a corner. But you do have it. And if we can kind of go into that place where we didn't have power, where we were taken advantage of, where we were controlled, or whatever it is, then we can get into that, and the people didn't understand what I was saying.
Right.
And then we can kind of start to, what could that be like for this person through this other lens? But it's not a fast job. And unfortunately, we're about microwave society here in the US. And so even doing the work on a professional level, if you're talking about organizations, or you're doing it grassroots in community building, this is years of steady attention. It's like a dojo. And how people aren't committed to that kind of work. It's so much more gratifying to go do the proverbial dig a well,
Right. Check the box.
Just go over there and you've done a thing. But honestly, if we're going to kind of change this, then we have to be in touch with, wow, I know what that feels like. This constant saying, I don't know what that feels like. Yeah, you don't know what it feels like specifically about my identity, but you do know what this taken away from, controlled, like removed from access, not connected, you know what that feels like, and you know that it's violence. And you can use that knowing to kind of figure out, how do we stop this violence for everyone, group by group.
And we're all, like, as autistic people, we're all going through this. Our Make America Healthy Again episode talked about this, but with the, announcement, we are going to find the cause of and cure autism by September. We are all feeling that, like, what are you talking about, my guy? Have you read anything? Have you talked to, like, a single autistic person? Are you just talking to these autism moms?
Have you talked to Elon Musk?
Right.
All the ways you're describing how autism and autistics can't do things, and you have Elon Musk out here just wreaking havoc all over.
Right. But he apparently, he maybe doesn't need to pay taxes. We were recently told we can't play baseball or pay taxes. So
there are some things that are true there.
Right. I was going to say that may be true for Elon Musk. In fact, I don't know.
I think so. But
I think that's like, let's talk about the difference not the difference, but let's talk about intersectionality, and then how those layers affect things, but how you can tap into where you are in the marginalized group to at least get a sense of what you don't know.
Yeah. And Kimberly Crenshaw, the person who coined intersectionality, really does remind us that this isn't just creating a longer list of boxes to check off, right? This is us having additional lenses to see. So just like Faith was saying, if you are assigned female at birth, or identifying as a woman, you probably can resonate with the way that men are completely ignorant of so many experiences and so many privileges that we have. If you are somebody who experienced poverty, you probably can identify with the ways that, in general, people who are poor, over-policed, not believed, have to work harder, spend more money both in taxes and everyday essentials, just to have the bare minimum while somebody's barking at you, talking about, well, if you just don't go to McDonald's, if you don't get some gym shoes, it's like, yeah, no, you can't save your way out of systemic poverty because it's a system. If you are somebody who is neurodivergent, if you are somebody who is disabled, invisible disabilities or visible disabilities, realizing the ways that you're talked down to, or the ways that if people know about you, that they presume all kinds of things that are not true, finding those places of empathy, finding those places of resonance to then listen and go, how, again, as Faith was saying, how do I resonate with how this feels, and who's able to make change, or who's able to be part of the change. So for me, I feel an especially heavy burden, and it gets on my own nerves, to really address men and how we are terrible on so many levels. I'm really good at talking to women. I'm really good at understanding and spending time with, in context, and resonating with the experience of women. But I hate talking to men about men being trash on so many levels. But I'm the one who needs to do that. I have to work through my own stuff. And again, specifically Black men. I'm not going to put Black men out on this podcast, but I am going to figure out what I need to do to reach my own people. And I say that to say, I want white people to reach their own people.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways that I can say things, and I've seen this time and time again. I can say things out of my mouth, and because I said it, people will fight it. And if someone who is white, and especially if they are male and cis and heterosexual, says the same thing I said and quotes me, it changes policies. People go, oh, this is a great idea. I love this. I'm like, nothing changed except for who you heard it from. But because we have biases, because we have these things, I had to learn that I'm not going to be the source for many people, even though I'm going to teach the people who are going to be listened to. And that leaves me to not be spending all of my time fighting back and forth with folks on Facebook, and instead empowering the people who will listen to me to go do the work with folks who won't listen to me.
Yeah.
Faith, Tiffany Hammond, do you follow Fidgets and Fries? Do you know Tiffany's? No, you would love her stuff. She's so good. She has a New York Times bestselling book called A Day Without Words, which is a kid's book about nonverbal kids. It's so good. That's how I found her. But so she said something that we have a shared experience with, but she said, if you're wondering why the people in your community aren't demanding justice for Victor, you should know you didn't build a space that made safety for all a priority. And I have a past life that you were part of where I had no idea that I was doing that. I was just not thinking about making a safe space for everybody. Yeah. And I have come to the Autistic Culture Podcast with like much more consciousness than I had when I started my publishing company that you were a part of. But what does that mean to you, building a space? Because I feel like you teach companies to do this. This is what you do for a living. But what does it mean to build a space that makes safety a priority for all? Safety for all a priority.
I mean, this is a thesis, that's.
I think it was your thesis. Have you finished it yet, ma'am?
We'll get back to that.
Okay.
I think that the one thing, though, that sticks out to me whenever I'm approaching this topic is, if you want to, there is no such thing as a safe space. So there is only space that's committed to safety as much as possible, committed to need fulfillment for everyone, and committed to the repair and protection when it fails. So it's like, stuff is going to happen, but how do we build space where everybody owns that we want to make this a mutual need fulfillment is our priority for everyone? And when it breaks, the person who it's broken for isn't saying, help me, please help me. It's everybody noticing that is broken and moving towards us. How do we do that? We have to look for people on the margins. Like you must design, construct, build relationships, set up products. You must build for the people on the edges. I tell the story all the time that the all gender bathrooms are a lifesaver for me because I have an adult.
Jaden.
Yes, I go into the women's room with the grown man, and people look at me, and I have to get kind of gangster. I'm just like, don't look at anybody. We're just going in. An all gender bathroom, like my shoulders can be down. There's nothing to explain, right? And when we design solutions for the people on the margins, everyone benefits. Everybody. It's like deli style. All the stuff is available. And then you who are masking could just pick something. And it's like, oh, I can mask a little less. Right. And so when we're thinking about community, when we're thinking about workspaces, when we're thinking about faith-based spaces, whatever it is, the question has to be who's on the edges, who's on the side of the, the high school dance, who's leaning on the wall, who's outside at the door, who habitually does not attend, and why. Because the people who are inside, their stuff will be helped when we solve that problem for that person outside. And so that's the, once we're not doing that and we're not approach the,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just also want to expand one point is that whiteness often consumes the entire conversation when it comes to conversations about race and about what's going on in the world. And we as people of color, we have our own stuff, our own work to do. And so the interruption that I also want to hold out is that for those of us who are people of color, for those of us who are occupying various other spaces, like we have to interrupt the focus only on whiteness and figure out what's the stuff I need to do in my family, what's the stuff I need to do in my neighborhood, my community, because the idea of calling, oh, that's not autism, that's he just a little weird, or they cousin such and such, oh no, they're just quirky. Like we have our own stuff to do too. And so I want to just hold out for anyone who's listening that like let's find our people, let's do our own internal work, because yes, it is about decolonizing, it is about creating safe spaces for ourselves. But once we're in our own spaces, like me as a Black gay man still has to deal with the ways that I'm not fully accepted as gay in Black spaces, right? Like there's always another layer, which sounds exhausting, but but the awareness,
or maybe it is humaning. Like maybe that makes us more human. I have been obsessed lately with Trisha Hersey's Rest is Resistance work.
Yes, love
and
her.
she, oh my God, she has this book. It's like an audiobook. It's called We Will Rest. It's just an hour. Oh my God. I have been recommending it to everyone. I keep just sending it to strangers. Like people are like, hey, would you like a warranty for your car? And I'm like, We Will Rest, The Art of Escape. I'm like replying back to spammers, you name it. But this book, it's 1 hour. And I think if everybody on the planet listened to it, it would change everything, because at the heart of all of this, in my opinion, is the centering of capitalism. Yes. And you take one look at Victor, and it doesn't matter if it's cerebral palsy or he's drunk. That guy is not adding to the bottom line. What is he contributing to society? How much money is he going to make? What do we really need him? Like, what do we need him for? And that sounds so extreme, but we are actually doing that all the time.
Yeah.
And if you can start to even see moments outside of capitalism, I think it becomes like even more clear what we lose when we center whiteness and center we did an episode recently where we talked about this whole giftedness or twice exceptional, like high HSPs, highly sensory people, like when we are like finding all these ways to separate ourselves from the poor people in our community, the Black and brown people in our community, the people that have less economic value. That is what we are doing. We are reinforcing capitalism.
Yeah.
And I
And
think
go ahead, Faith.
we don't, I didn't even hold the word capitalism as a concept, right? So it, even being able to see that that's what's happening is part of the difficulty. And so part of what I've said is, internally, I can assess when I think I'm better than a person, or I can assess when I think I'm better than this characteristic I have is better than this thing about that person. The moment I'm able to track that in, and then I can pause there and say, where did I get that from? What's going on there? I think that because yes, we're feeding into all these massive systems that we inherited from, we can even blame them, horribly wicked people. And yet fundamentally on the inside of us, what we've taken is, yeah, I'm better than this person in this way, and therefore they are, whether it's deserving or whatever, of less, and so I can be less careful, whatever that means. And yeah, so I just like, can we build that pause in our own reflections and just say, so in all our communities, as Darren is saying, in all our moments, like I had to learn, because I am neurotypical passing depending on the day, then I have privilege, and therefore I am like, oh my goodness, if you could just hurry. This time blindness is such, if you could be more organized. And I'm not saying it, but I am thinking it, and that impacts what I think you deserve, what I think you should have access to. Clearly you're not going to earn any money because you just, versus, oh wow, how did I just do that? And that's
so fast.
Yeah, like
so
that.
fast. Yeah.
Gosh, Faith, I'm having a body moment even as I hear you say that. Faith and I have a wonderful friendship, and for me, being late has been a lifelong thing, and my whole life it was, oh, you're just underperforming, you're just not doing enough, right? And so even hearing Faith recount her experience, my stomach physically tightens up, and I'm already ready to defend myself, and this isn't about me.
Right.
Right. It's not
Right.
about me. But and this is coming from somebody who I know is safe, who I've called for safety and called for support already. So it's one of those things of, to know that our body has these memories. Body keeps the score, or and many of the other people who've written stuff, not just that book. But it's one of those things to know that in the same way our justice sensitivity is going to pop up. Are the ways that we in our own neurodivergence have lots of traumatized experiences, mean that sometimes when you see another disabled person being disabled, you will internally go, but I had to do this, they need to get it together. I had to work on this, they need to get. Or we'll have the thing of, you're talking about this, your experience, Faith, and now I need to defend myself from the thing that you're not bringing to me. You're just recounting your experience. But it's, again, one of those things. There's so much that we can exhale and let go. And then I had one other little call in for us. They're typically, when we start to name the ever increasing ways that we describe or label certain experiences or certain parts of our experience, like whether it's how many letters in the LGBTQ alphabet, or whether it's how many ways that we define or describe the experiences of autism and neurodivergence. Some people will, especially when we get into our black white thinking, some people will go, well, if we just stop doing all these labels, if we just stop naming all these races, if everyone just was just human, then it would all go away. And it's like, nope. That some of our desire to do that is our order keeping. Some of that desire to do that is the ways that we would like to have everything fit neatly into a box. And it does not actually solve the problem. It makes us more comfortable. It makes
which us does it make more comfortable?
Right. It's the part that we're reaching for. We want to regulate, and that is human, and that is good. But we have to also check why we're reaching for the thing we're reaching for. Like, do I need to challenge Faith or to tell Faith about how I struggle with being late?
Right.
Or do I need to hear what my own like internal moment is and listen to my own body and be like, yes, Darren, you have been harmed by that and you're safe
Yeah.
and you're okay. Like that's the somatics, the parts where our bodies are protecting us for survival, but where we have to do those interruptions.
Yeah.
And I think that's old system programming, right? And so the system is self-maintaining, right? Because we've all so back to the masking, back to the controlling, back to and having to defend our place in the hierarchy, and all of that is the system. So
Right.
to kind of allow the messiness, the system collapse is messy. No one wants the mess. Everybody wants a clean solution. Faith, just give me the thing, conflict restorative, this a pathway to so that no employee will upset another employee. And I'm like, none. There's none. We're gonna listen and we're gonna talk and we're gonna hold space. There is no,
Right.
right? But the willingness to kind of just be, oh, it's all gonna fall on the ground, these little false structures that we've created. And then we're gonna get to practice. You and I are human, and the boxes that we had created for the reasons we created it, advantage, oppression, etc., those boxes do exist in our bodies and so we have to be working on the healing and the repair while also reimagining what the future looks like, while we're sitting in this confused mess of, well, we actually don't know what to do because the system told us what to do.
Right.
We don't even
Right.
have the imagination.
Yeah, it was funny. My kids were in a theater group, and they were writing something about, it was like Juneteenth, so it was like Black liberation, and they created, it's teenagers, so they were writing from their own imaginations. And my kids came back to me and said, you know what we did? We created a whole different species from another planet to oppress. And I was like, it was funny to me. The kids wouldn't have said that. It's just that my kids are, they're exceptional. And so they were just like, wait a second. To imagine our liberation, we created something else to oppress. And I was like, oh my God, we kind of need to sit at the table a little longer.
Wakanda forever, baby.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. I could talk to you guys forever. This has been such an important conversation. And I think if there's one takeaway that I just want to share from this is I realize how much time is tied to capitalism, because I'm like, I have to get this out. If I don't do this, it won't count. We can't talk about this later. And I'm like, where are those coming from, those values? Exactly. But that said, since we're living in capitalism, I would love it if you guys would support the GoFundMe for Victor Perez, who, I want to honor what happened to him, and for us to take a minute and really reflect on that, because his sister should not have had to watch him get shot. His family should not be burying their child, but here we are again. And if we believe in autistic culture, if we believe in justice, if we believe in inclusion, if we want that inclusion as autistic people, if we are asking for that for some of us, then we have to ask for that for all of us. So a culture that only protects the most privileged among us is not liberation, it is replication. As Faith's kids made so clear, it is just another form of white supremacy or some supremacy. And we will just keep creating that. So my thanks again to Faith Clarke, inclusion specialist, Darren Calhoun, host of the Second Sunday podcast, and you can find him at Hey Darren. I will put all your links in the show notes. Thanks also to Tiffany Hammond, who said, the work is not collapsing under guilt. It is standing up in accountability. I know there's so much going on politically every hour. It seems like we've got more bad news, and it's easy for Victor's story to just get lost in the noise. So many people have said to me, I'm not watching the news right now because it's so debilitating and I can't afford to spiral. So if you listen to this and it was hard for you and you have been not listening to things, just thank you. Thank you for showing up, and also rest when you need to. I'm going to include We Will Rest by Trisha Hersey in the show notes, and as well as the GoFundMe link. and everything else we talked about today. So we are not done telling the truth. We are not done fighting each other, fighting for each other, fighting for community, fighting for liberation. So thank you, Faith and Darren, for being with me. Stay safe.
Angela, one last request.
Yes.
For people to, if you know a family that has a person with autism, especially nonverbal autism, don't give them the burden of explaining, but just go hang out. If they let you, run the risk of being rejected, but just go hang out. It's amazing what you will understand by just sitting and taking stuff in.
So good. So good. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Autistic Culture Podcast. You can hear our show through any podcast player, but the best way to engage with the show is by going to autisticculturepodcast.com. When you go there for the first time, you might be confused, but once you pop in an email address into that login screen, it will all make sense.
Now, why would I give a stranger on the internet my email address?
By giving us an email address, they will get free access to transcripts as well as videos for each show that are released on the same day as our podcast episodes.
So our podcast is free everywhere if you go to autisticculturepodcast.com. They can trade us their email address for transcripts, videos, links to things we talk about on the show, and special invitations. All that for free? What do they get if they decide to give us some of their hard-earned money? Other than our deep appreciation, of course.
We know not everyone can afford to become paid supporters, but for those who can, that's what helps us pay our amazing producer and content manager. And to say thanks for helping us defray the cost of doing the show, we do have some exclusive perks like live Q&A calls with us. They get access to our secret book club podcast, my virtual writing circle, where you can process some of your autistic trauma in writing.
And a digital copy of our brand new book, Adult Autism Home Assessment, our definitive guide to accurate and affirming self-identification, as well as audiobook recordings.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to also tune in for our Autistic Culture episodes every Tuesday, where we celebrate autistic contributions to society, culture, and history.
This is the way.